From DAYSTAR TV, good morning. My name is Mura Shalmith, and this is yet another episode of the Political Perspective Show. And today we are going to talk about the students' politics and the university politics, and also the national politics. Now, with me today are two special guests who are going to help us tackle the topic of today. Karibuni sana. So, you are going to tell us your name, what you do, na cheo yako.
Okay. Good morning. I'm Evans Owino. I currently serve as the DUSA speaker, DUSA Congress speaker. I'm also the president of DAYSTAR University School of Law Association.
Okay.
Good morning once again. My name is Arnold Feather. Many people know me as Navara. Currently a student leader under the School of Communication. He's actually my boss. So,
So you have your boss here.
yeah, with my
Now we are talking about university leadership and student leadership. And you've talked about you guys being student leaders in DAYSTAR University. So will you tell us what inspired you to join politics at this early age?
Yes. Thank you. To start with, it is always said that leadership is yes. So when I was still young, I can remember still in primary school, I got to be elected several times and sometimes appointed, because the system back then was not like well defined. So the headmaster could wake up and decide to appoint someone a head boy. So when I was in 7, I got to be appointed the head boy of wherever village school that I was in. And later when I joined high school, I also got appointed to become a prefect. But the system was more defined in that for you to become a prefect, it was the school director appointing you, and there are those criteria used and looked upon for you to be appointed. So it is something that has been inside me. So when I came to campus, it just came inside me, and I decided, why can't I vie? Then I decided to vie, and the rest is history.
What about you, Navara?
For me, I wouldn't term it as you put it, because leadership and politics are two different things. And I think for us here, we're just student leaders. But now, if you term us as politicians, these are different people with different perspectives and different worldviews of how they probably tend to relate with their constituents, and it's totally different. And for me, what drove me into leadership is, for the longest time, I've actually been leading in various corps, like you've mentioned. For him, it started in primary level. Where did I start mine? I think it was also in primary level, because at some point I was a prefect. I think I must have been so hard on people, and the position was taken away from me. But getting back to high school, that was in form 2 or 3 there. I ran for a certain position. I acquired it. I was actually standing in for acting in at the position of the males counselor. In our school, we had something called a males counselor. So we remember when you could interact with the various high schools, maybe the lady schools, so they could we could exchange the letters and stuff. I don't know that your schools had that, but for me, my school had that, and so I was put in to represent that particular position, where I would circulate the letters that go for the department and those for the students. So it was just a link. And moving on to campus, I actually I'm that kind of a person who can't really sit at one specific point. So I think my aggressiveness brought it to perspective that I can actually lead, and many students were actually counting on me for a number of things. And so there came this time to bring in the new leadership under the university, after failing to have the student leaders for a very long period of time. And so I tried it, and I actually won for the first time, and that's been pushing me up to now.
Okay, so what you're saying is uh, you're a leader, not a politician. But not a politician, but do you think universities is also like there's just some politics in it, not just because you're a leader. There's politics in it also.
There's a lot of politics in the universities, and this is even evident in mostly the public universities.
Okay.
I'm sure you've seen how the University of Nairobi handle their student leaders. You know, for them, it's quite a big deal in a way that some are even given I'm not sure if they're given the bodyguards, but the kind of treatment that they're given is totally different from what we're having here in our institution. And so that's why I'd really differ with the aspect of, for us here being called politicians, because whatever we do is not different, but in a certain perspective compared to what other people do. Yeah.
Okay, what do you think, Evans?
Yes, what I think is you cannot, I think in a way, politics and leadership is something, they are tied together. But it depends with the scenario where you are in, because when in matters campus leadership or the national politics, it is total politics. And before we acquired these seats that we are in right now as student leaders at DAYSTAR, it was all politics. And I remember even the election body, the ECD, they gave a period of a whole month for politicking or for campaigns.
Yeah.
And that brings in the political aspect of it. So student leadership, politics, well connected. But I'll try and differ it a bit, differentiate it a bit with the issues to do with corporate companies, corporate bodies. They require leadership or leaders, and not politics. But for us, it is more politics, and for you to acquire these seats, you have to politic.
Okay, now you are student leaders. Now, what do you think about, now we are in a season where we are going to vote, we have been having campaigns all over the country. Now, what do you think about the Kenyan politics at this time?
You know, when you talk about the Kenyan politics, that's quite a wide view of it. So I don't know which specific angle you'd like to narrow down into. Because when you talk of the Kenyan politics, we have a lot that is quite ongoing. We've seen the senators do their debate, we've seen the gubernatorial debate, we've seen the presidential debate, and there's quite a lot that we can actually learn from them. Some of them are not even prepared. We have quite a number who still have shaky kinds of manifestos, and that is actually politics, because again, like I mentioned at the beginning, different people have different views towards whatever they're going for, and so their interests are also different in a particular way. So you never know what one is really aiming to do. Because I remember today, Sakaja was being interviewed at Kiss FM, and he was quite eloquent in whatever he was saying. And not that I'm actually supporting Sakaja, but I'm just trying to bring that aspect of politics that you're talking about. So there's quite a lot that is ongoing in the Kenyan politics. And yeah.
So what do you think in general? So does it inspire you, or you personally, what do you think about the Kenyan politics?
It's quite inspirational, because it actually opens my mind into knowing what is happening in the outside world, because you know, for us here, it's like shallow politics.
Yeah.
But when you go outside, like in the national politics level, it's quite different. You really have to articulate yourself well. You really have to strategize yourself so that you can actually garner the votes. But it's quite different from whatever we are seeing from the student level, but just an advanced level of politics, because you see, for them, they have to spend a lot of money with doing the campaigns, while for us here, we can just buy someone lunch, $50, and you get to win the votes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. So, what I can say about the ongoing politics in Kenya, For the first time, and I'm speaking this out of some a little bit of happiness and deep from inside my heart, that for the first time we are having campaigns that leaders are talking about, not about them, but about wananchi. And the reason why I'm saying this is because we've seen various political leaders, and especially the presidential candidates, they've launched their manifestos, and whatever is entailed in those manifestos is more economy. And when leaders start speaking about things that matter like economy, that one you can be sure that whatever outcome that we are going to get after the August 9th, then whatever outcome will be for the benefit of Kenyans. Because now we are talking about economy. The politics have moved from tribal politics. They have moved from more abuses, though they are still there. But people are now starting to, the citizens of Kenya are now starting to ask these politicians questions. That what are you bringing to the table? What are you going to offer for us as citizens? So with that, I think we are heading to the right direction as a country, and it is a matter of let us wait and see what comes out of these elections.
Okay. Now talking about, we have shifted from the previous elections where politicians just want the seats for their own purposes or for their own selfish reasons. Now we have seen previously where they just campaign and they incite people to even to violence, and they don't have the heart for the people. But right now we are seeing most of them, they're having the heart of people. Do you think it's because they want to win you, or it's because they are genuine?
Again, politics it's an interesting game. I wouldn't like to go with the narrative that politics is a dirty game. Yes, it is a dirty game, but it's an interesting game because these are the times when you'll see someone come. They might even cry on your face and tell you this and this will be done for you if you give. It's a give and take thing.
Okay.
And you see, for them, with the common mwananchi, they'll be like, we give you this, they usually give, 50 shillings, not a lot. The other day we saw the Central Bank of Kenya, there was a complaint that the notes had been...
The bid has actually
been
higher.
That the notes had been taken that had been withdrawn by the politicians, and so there were no 200 shillings and 100 shillings. So just trying to put it in this way, that these are the times when we'll see many people change, even those who had been full of animosity and all those other negative vibes. They'll definitely come and try to taint themselves in a good way, trying to sell. Definitely, it's trying to portray a good image so that you can see them in a different way.
Okay.
But deep down, there are very few genuine leaders that we have. And that's why I was trying to bring about the difference between politics and leadership.
Okay.
So for this that we are seeing mostly ongoing, we have politicians and less of leaders. And again, just to echo what he mentioned about the current situation of politics in Kenya, I think we're going to have, for the first time, we're going to have some sort of peaceful elections, because Kenyans are out of the narrative of having to fight and do all of these other negative things just to make politicians win the various seats they're vying for. Because in the recent past, we've seen so many post-election violences. We are the ones, Mwananchi suffer a lot for the selfish interest gains of the politicians. But I think that narrative is quite changing, and the trajectory is quite on a positive note.
Okay. Now that's said and done, we'll be back after our break. Now, welcome back to the Political Perspective Show, where all questions are asked, answers perceived, and verified as well. Now, we were talking about politics in Kenya. Now, what do you think the Kenyan politics has affected the student politics in general?
Thank you. To answer that question well, I'll say this. first of all, the current system that we are using as universities in terms of student leadership, it took away the issue to do with students voting in their leaders, the top leadership. Now we are having a system where we have representative or delegate system where it is the students to elect the delegates, and now the delegates to elect the council members or the top leadership in universities. But what are some of the implications of this? One of the implications is we are having a scenario where it is very easy for someone vying for a council position to bribe his way through, because now the people you need to bribe, for example, in DAYSTAR University, they're only 36, and we are not saying that anyone bribed anyone. We're just saying these are some of the things that are there. You can it is easier to bribe 36 people than it is easier to than bribing around 7,000 population of DAYSTAR. So with that, in a way, it has reduced the level of politicking at in universities during these elections. And if you try to compare it now with the national politics, it is actually not, you cannot compare, because it has now reduced the level of the violence. It has reduced the amount of campaigns, and it is now more of an indoor thing and more of trying to talk to these delegates to elect you into an office. So it is not easily you cannot compare them. They're not comparative in nature, the two of them. But what I can say is, in a way, it still translates to the national politics, because once you've been in this university politics, it is very easy for you to climb up there to the national politics. At the end of the day, they still match in a way. So, yes.
Okay. What do you think, Navara?
I think the system that we're actually running on right now was introduced a few years ago. It's called the draconian something rule. And this has actually seen a very big difference in terms of how institutions of higher learning used to bring on board leaders who would probably steer them for the next few years. And so if you just have a look at the system that we had initially, we used to have a majority kind of a system whereby the entire body of the students would actually vote in the respective student leaders. But like you mentioned, this has actually changed. And so right now, it's very easy to bring on board leaders who have actually, not leaders, but now it's easy to bring on the politicians rather than the leaders that we actually aspire to have. You get the difference? We have now so many of politicians on board, because in the universities right now, we have the Congress members who are actually representing the various departments and schools that are in place. And so they're the ones who are going to elect the higher positions of the school. For this case, we call them council. And so if you see that critically, if you critically look into that, you find that there are high chances that the entire student body would not get what they would have aspired to have if they had specifically and as a majority voted for the specific leaders that they would have wanted to go for. And so that has really changed the narrative in which politics is being conducted in the universities. And it's actually changed. And I'm not so sure if it's gonna go back to the actual level of politics that used to be there maybe before the COVID period, that's in 2019. And so it's actually a nice platform for student leaders to transit into getting to the national level, because at least now we have representatives who at least have managed to interact with various students, know their interests, can come up with manifestos, and actually articulate themselves well in front of quite a mass that is of a sober mind. And they can present their ideas, and you see that's actually leadership on another level.
Okay. Now, we are in a political cycle right now in our country, and we have seen politicians taking student leaders to rallies. I don't know what they want to, okay, maybe they want to, for them to be known or seen and them to talk to the students. What do you think they are using the student leaders to get votes from now their schools? Because I've seen, for example, the Mount Kenya University president, he was with the UDA presidential candidate, that is Ruto, and he was telling them that this is our leader, he's from MKU. And do you think he's using that, or the politicians are using the student leaders to get votes from now the youths that are in school, or they're just what do you think?
You see, some of the best mobilizers are these student leaders. And whatever advantage that these politicians are taking right now is to take these student leaders to try and help them mobilize. But at the end of the day, I think there's, apart from capacity building in this specific student leader, some of them go there for money because politicians have money. So if you're given something to go and take this amount, mobilize, and coming to that area, so technically it is an issue of mobilization, and also it is a give and take. So you give me something, I try to mobilize the youth around, because it is deemed as being, by virtue of being a president of DAYSTAR University, at least you have a following and student following, and that is what they are looking for. And that is why we are saying, my take on democracy is, it is no longer democracy, because it only requires the number of people I can mobilize during a rally, and by virtue of people seeing a huge crowd, it reflects in people's mind that I'm definitely going to win. So that is the main objective of trying to bring these student leaders on board, and especially the top leadership in the universities on board. And whenever a politician is coming around, they have to look at, is there any student leader around? Because we need that student leader to mobilize for us. But what I can say in regards to that also is, I think for the longest time the youth have been used to instigate wars, to do the bad things in politics. And my advice to the youth would be, please, this coming election, it is about what agenda a candidate is coming up with, or what agenda a candidate is offering. It is not about I'm a diehard to this candidate, so whatever this candidate says, I'm going to do it. No. If the candidate says or decides to tell you to incite a war somewhere or do this, please refuse. And it pained me a lot when I saw that the issue with leaflets in Eldoret. And it was very sad that it were the students in Moi who were arrested and arraigned in court. And you ask yourself, do you think it is these students who decided from their own, or wherever they are, to draft these leaflets and throw them away in the streets of Eldoret? No, someone sent them, and that is the truth. Because in my own mind, I cannot just sit somewhere, write, and throw the leaflets to the street. So someone sent them. That is what we are refusing as student leaders.
Okay, and you've said that the student leaders are being used, or the students are being used, let's say the youth are being used by the politicians. Why are we having that discussion in another political cycle or election cycle? Because now you guys know that the youth are being used. Why are we having that discussion again? Is it because of money? Is it because of fame?
You know, politics is a very interesting game, again, like I mentioned. And so you have to be strategical. You have to play your cards right. It's about the numbers. And so all these politicians are actually eyeing on where they're going to get huge numbers, massive numbers to garner votes from. And so imagine a university like Kenyatta University with over quite a number of students.
Okay.
Let me say getting to 20,000, 15,000. That's quite a big number of votes. And so over time, you'll actually see these politicians coming to interact with student leaders, because they know that these particular people have massive followers. And for students, it's quite different because you always tend to follow what your leader has to say. And in an instance like for us here in school, whenever you call for a baraza, most of the students will be willing to come and listen to you because they believe they elected you for a purpose and they have a right to listen to you. And so these politicians would oftenly rather go down to the student leaders because they know that's where the numbers are. For all other people, they can be convinced on air, TV, blah, blah, blah. But now, to get these specific votes for the youth, they really have to be strategical. And this has since been on the rise, and it's happened quite a number of times. And I don't think it's something that is going to change over time, or rather, if we can anticipate it changing, because I don't think it's going to be that way, because we still have politics ongoing. There are many years of politics coming. And so you really have to be strategical. And I would like to say that students and student leaders need to be very thoughtful of how they're going to handle this particular election period. The narrative of getting to post-election violence is actually gone. Yeah. We need to change this and actually go to a point where we can actually look at the specific leaders because we also have, we as student leaders have people we are eyeing to be like. And so it's you to choose that particular leader in your sober mind and know that this particular person is going to bring about change. And so just for this political season and 3 days to the elections, I'd like to say that we need to be sober-minded. Let's not bleed so that they can lead. Yeah. Let's be very categorical in whatever we are doing so that we can get this particular change we've been wanting and yearning for a very long period of time.
Okay. So as you have heard, do not bleed for them to lead. We are going to be back after a short break. We are back for our last segment, and you've heard that we have all seen that the president and his deputy are arguing in public. There's a time he was in Nakuru, and he was talking bad about his deputy. What do you think about them just always arguing in public and not solving their own issues?
I think that the presidency is sacred, and that office, you cannot hold that office with emotions. So this presidency entails both the president and the deputy because they are elected as one. So from my end, it is a matter of they need to sort out their issues in private, because also presidency is a symbol of national unity. And as a president, it is so wrong for our current president, and he's going down in history as in a negative manner, as he's been involving himself in arguments, the deputy, involving himself in the current ongoing politics. And that is so wrong. You remember when Kibaki retired or was going home, he never involved himself in the ongoing politics. By then, it was around 2013. He was very silent. He went home quiet. And what the president can now do for Kenyans is to just go home silent and leave Kenyans to make their own decision in the ballot.
Okay. Navarra?
The aspect of the president and his deputy washing their dirty linen in public is quite not a good thing to display to the upcoming leaders and many of us who aspire to hold such kind of positions. And so this is something that is very unwelcoming, and I wouldn't say like my colleague here, he's trying to make it like Uhuru is the one on the wrong, but this is a fair thing. And so they just need to see how they can strike a balance between their arguments and give the public a certain way of thoughts and engage in positive conversations that can lead into positive notes of economic development and so what have you. And so I really don't like how they've been doing it over the past few days, and this is actually demeaning the positions that they hold. And so you see, most of these people actually out here are starting to view the position as something that is normal. And you see, that is a very high seat in this republic.
Yeah.
It's not something that you can joke around, hurl words, hurl abuses, engage in very petty conversations. So it's unwelcoming.
Okay. Now it's 3 days to election, and we are going to vote. What are you going to tell the youth? What are you going to tell the people of Kenya as we are going to vote for our leaders? In 1 minute.
Okay.
30 seconds.
In 30 seconds, I'll be very brief. What I'll say is that the politicians, they have done their part. It is now time for Kenyans to do their part. And the only thing we are requesting from the politicians is that they must now leave Kenyans to make a decision of their own. And we only require two things from them. We require peaceful voting and peaceful inauguration of whoever will be elected. And what I can tell the youth is, this country has gone through the dark days, and we don't want to speak about the dark days. And we can never make again another decision, another mistake that we made before. And the youth must now know their worth, involve themselves in the current politics, because youth are the future leaders. And being a future leader, you cannot distance yourself from politics. So involve yourself, but ensure that whatever input that you're bringing to the table in politics is a positive input.
Okay. Navarra, 30 seconds.
This is an opportunity to change the country that you're living in. And so it's one right that you have that is, it's an underogable right. By that I mean it's a very special right to you. And this is an opportunity for you to bring on board the leaders whom you aspire to lead you for the next couple of years. And so let us not bleed so that they can lead. Be wise in making your decisions. Vote for change. Vote for one whom you think and you know is going to bring about this change that we have been yearning for the longest period of time.
Okay, that was it for our show today. You've heard do not bleed for them to lead, and also let's have a peaceful election. Now, see you next time, same place. Bye-bye.